Hello and welcome to Media 7. The National Party released its broadcasting policy last week. 332 words under the headings Diversity and Choice and Fit for the Future. The tone is largely one of continuity. The major exception, $15 million in annual funding for programs to be made under TVNZ's charter requirements, will now be available to other broadcasters on a contestable basis via NZ On Air. On an industry scale, the amount of money involved is modest. But what's the philosophy? And what does it mean for public broadcasting? Joining us tonight are the man whose name is on the policy, National's broadcasting spokesman, Jonathan Coleman, South Pacific Pictures Chief Executive, John Barnett, and Paul Norris, head of the Broadcasting School at Christchurch Polytechnic and former news chief at TVNZ. Jonathan, if we could start with you. The one thing it doesn't actually say anywhere in your policy, although it's been reported as such, is that you're dispensing with the charter itself. Can you confirm that you are?
Well, effectively, Russell, we are going to be because, the practical side of the Charter was that there was funding which was linked to a mandated set of priorities. Now, we're going to take that $15 million of direct funding. We don't believe it's delivered what it should have for the public. We're putting it through New Zealand On Air. We're going to open up that funding to competition.
But the question was, are you replacing the Charter?
Well, effectively, if TVNZ wants to have a mission statement, that's fine by us. But in terms of the Charter
the
and its
nature of that mission
form,
statement
it
will
won't
be up
there.
to TVNZ.
There will
be no
pretty
view
much.
from a government that you're part of.
We're being quite open. There's no hidden agenda in this policy. We're saying take that money, New Zealand On Air, open it up to all the competition that we've got, all the talented producers and broadcasters. Let's get some great quality public broadcasting on our screens, which we don't believe the Charter's
This is one thing
delivered.
that puzzles me a little bit about the policy announcement. OK, it's brief.
Yeah.
I can't see a philosophy behind it. You're insisting, and Paul's been worried about this, that you are not going to sell TVNZ. Yep. You haven't advanced the rationale for keeping it in public hands.
Well, the philosophy,
what is that rationale?
The first thing is we're committed to public broadcasting, and we've said that quite up front, and there always will be funding there for public broadcasting under a national government. In terms of keeping this in public ownership, we believe that it's a public asset which should be performing far better than it has. Last year on $375 million of revenue, it basically made a loss. So we think, look, this should be doing a heck of a lot better. No one would want to buy this right now. The time for selling TVNZ was back at the end of the 90s, if that was what people wanted to do. The time has passed. We've got a broadcasting policy here that's fit for the future, for the way we see broadcasting will develop. Platforms and audiences are fragmenting. We're saying we're committed to public broadcasting as opposed to a public broadcaster. And the whole emphasis is we want to see broadcasting on the screen. It's for the public. It's not for the academics. It's not for the journalists, and it's not for the broadcasters.
Not for the bureaucrats?
Public.
I was waiting for you to say not for the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
John, in 2005, you gave the John O'Shea Memorial Speech, and you called for a reform such that the public broadcasting obligation was given to NZ On Air to distribute amongst all the broadcasters who are eligible. That's pretty much what you've got under this policy. Are you happy with that?
I am, because I believe, as Jonathan's articulated, that public broadcasting is what we should have. And I don't think it takes a public broadcaster, a designated public broadcaster, to get public broadcasting. Actually, Maori TV is a public broadcaster right now, and they are doing a lot of the things that TVNZ used to do. But I'm very happy with the notion of giving that money to a robust and transparent organisation like New Zealand On Air.
You're not so confident, Paul.
Well, I'm very concerned. How can Jonathan here say that he's supporting public broadcasting or will continue public broadcasting when this particular policy will actually strip away the Charter and allow TVNZ to behave in a thoroughly commercial manner? It effectively takes away the dual mandate.
But they have been doing that.
Well, they haven't been doing that exactly in the last 5 years. They were certainly doing it in the previous period before the Charter came in, and that's what we'll go back to. We'll have TVNZ as a nakedly commercial animal, not a public broadcaster at all, not delivering on the ideals of public broadcasting, not creating programs for the whole audience.
So basically we'll go back to 2003, which doesn't sound like the end of the world. It doesn't sound like the sky is falling.
Well, it does if you're concerned about public broadcasting. I mean, and it's worse than that. I would go back to the late 90s before Labour came in and reformed TVNZ and tried to ensure that it did deliver at least a measure of public broadcasting. That's broadcasting with social, political and cultural values that are simply opposed to being driven by commercial performance. I mean, if you want
and,
to...
And yet Jonathan's point, seems to be that he supports all that, he signs up to that, he just doesn't believe that it has to be delivered by a public broadcaster.
My question would be, how is TVNZ's content different after the Charter as opposed to before the Charter?
Well,
and the answer is there is no difference. This is a straightforward, honest policy for TVNZ to operate under, and we're giving transparency, we're giving the broadcaster certainty, and there's going to be better content for the public to watch. They don't care what channel it's on.
If you look at TVNZ, whatever, annual report going back from 2004, 5, 6, 7, every year in 2003, every year they have said that they poll the public to find what the public wants from them, and they're responsive to it. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the kind of programs that the public say they want, they were programs that were being made before there was a Charter, and they're programs that they will continue to make after there's a Charter.
But John, if you look at the feedback on the Charter review, there was a very strong public mood in those responses from members of the public to the effect that they wanted a public broadcaster. They wanted an institution they could look to.
The numbers weren't at all significant. I
But
think
it was the people who cared enough to make submissions.
Well, they're also the people who actually don't seem to be aware that you can watch many of the programs like this on your computer screen. It doesn't matter when it's scheduled. They're also the people who, say that they really watch programs on the documentary channel and history and a whole lot of other places.
Isn't there a danger? And there was a great quote from Stephen Fry, who gave a speech on behalf of Ofcom. He described the model that you two are talking about as running the risk of a ghettoised, balkanised electronic bookshop of the home, where the public broadcasting obligation was spread so thinly across so many channels that it ceased to mean anything.
It's also been described as just a scattering of sultanas and the fruitcake.
But I absolutely disagree with that. I absolutely disagree with that.
You've got to look at what is the future of broadcasting and how are people going to be watching television. And, a lot of Generation Y, they are using programs like LimeWire to download stuff from anywhere. People are going to be watching TV like they listen to their iPod. And, this model of putting it through New Zealand On Air says, hey, we're committed to public broadcasting, but it's up to you where you source your content from.
We'll get to the future of broadcasting actually after the break. Before the break, if you could just briefly answer me a question. The one thing that wasn't in your policy announcement was you said you would continue support for Radio New Zealand and Maori television. The words that weren't there were at the current levels. Your colleague, Chris Finlayson, has made a similar announcement on arts and culture. He has made that clear. Do you want to use those words now?
No, it will be at current levels.
At current levels? Why wasn't it in there?
Look, it is an oversight. We didn't mean to have any ambiguity around that, but it will be at current levels, and you would expect that any minister would be lobbying the Minister of Finance at each budget round to try and secure more funding for the entities he's responsible for, he or she is responsible for. But there will not be a cut in funding to any of those state-owned entities.
What about Radio New Zealand Concert and Radio New Zealand International? They were not mentioned at all.
Well, we mentioned radio. That is another point of ambiguity, but we used the words Radio New Zealand, which now covers all those Radio New Zealand brands. So Concert and International will have no cut in funding either. And, we're definite about that. So, yes, I think that may be a lesson regarding ambiguity in policy statements.
I think we helped you a little bit with that ambiguity.
Thank you for that.
We will take a break now. When we come back, it's News Mash time and a little bit of the future of moving pictures.